Hello, I'm the Ultimate Fanboy, and we are on the third review of October. So far, I've reviewed The Nightmare Before Christmas and Courage the Cowardly Dog. So for this video, I decided to mix things up a bit and talk about something I've never seen before now. I'm also mixing things up in that, whereas the last things I reviewed were exceptional, this movie is not. But now I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into all that, let's first analyze the movie in question. A little Halloween special known as The Scary Godmother. This movie doesn't really have a story per se. I mean, the basic premise is the same as the book that this is based on. An arsehole kid named Jimmy and his friends are going to go trick-or-treating as it is Halloween. However, Jimmy has to look after his little cousin Hannah, not wanting her to cramp his style or whatever. He and his friends trick her into going into a spook house, hoping that she will get scared and run home. But instead she meets a witch who is the titular scary godmother, who takes Hannah to her realm where she is having a party with a whole host of other monsters. At the end, the monsters help Hannah get revenge on Jimmy and his friends by scaring them. So, the setup and the ending are pretty clear cut. However, the makers of this film seem to have forgotten to add something. The rest of the goddamn plot. Like I said, aside from the basic setup and the conclusion, this movie doesn't seem to have a real plot. It's just a string of scenes of characters interacting with each other and making jokes. There's no cohesive narrative or structure to it whatsoever. The most eventful thing that happens in the whole thing is that they order pizza. A side effect of this very, very bare bones, pun intended, plot is the amount of filler in it, and there is a lot of filler in this. There are a couple of jokes that elicit a slight chuckle, but 90% of the jokes fall flat. It's mostly just repetitive, dumb jokes that appeal to very young kids, but would have a very difficult time entertaining anyone old enough to count past 10. Basically, the story is meandering and dull, and if it wasn't for the really strange moments catching me off guard every so often, then I would probably have fell asleep watching it. It's a chore to sit through. Probably the biggest problem with this thing is the animation. The art design is supposed to be based off the books, which apparently won 4 awards for the watercolor artwork. Unfortunately, the art style really isn't transferred well with this movie. The backgrounds have noticeable black outlines to try and emulate the books. However, none of the characters have outlines, so the character designs stand out massively from the background. That and the weird dot eyes make them come across as really weird. On top of that, the lighting in every scene is really off, making the characters stand out from the background even more. As for the actual animation, it's even worse. The movements are really awkward and stiff, which is especially bad because it tries to have a lot of big comedic scenes with really over-the-top movements, and it just doesn't work here. There are also a ton of animation errors I noticed, especially with the wolf, most likely because characters covered in fur are notoriously difficult to animate in CGI. And the thing probably had the budget of a lunch at KFC, but the errors are too numerous to go into here. In short, the animation is a huge hindrance on the film. The characters aren't exactly winning me over. They aren't the worst lineup of characters, but I certainly don't think they are interesting enough to carry a film. Hannah is a little kid who's afraid of monsters and is nice. That's her entire personality, pretty much. It's understandable given that she's obviously supposed to be very, very young, but the whole film revolves around her, so we're stuck following a boring character, which makes it hard to care about what's going on. She's not awful, just bland. Jimmy's friends are even more uninteresting, with very little personality outside from Daryl, who is just weird. The only thing I remember about them is that they left Hannah in the spook house to scare her, which I remember thinking was a really dickish thing to do. Their scenes have the most filler because they have so little personality to work off of, which makes 50% of the movie really, really dull, even compared to the rest of the film. Jimmy is an asshole, and there is nothing else to say about him. Literally, that's the only character trait he has. Again, he's nowhere near the worst character that I've ever seen, but he's still an irritating prick all the same. Then there's the monsters. The monsters. There's the vampire family who, with the exception of the kid, just sounds like two bad Dracula impressions and the dad feels out of touch with the times or something. The wolf who is a thespian and eats a lot. He's just as annoying as Jimmy, if not more so. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't intentional. Bugaboo is a monster that scares kids for a living. How original. Apart from his voice, nothing particularly stands out about him. Finally, there's Scully, who's the only entertaining character in the movie, and I use the term loosely. That's because he has the strongest personality out of all the characters in the film. The jokes surrounding the fact that he is supposed to be a stereotypical gay guy, and just him in general, are actually pretty funny, and the one about almost everyone having a skeleton in their closet actually got a laugh out of me. He's good, but he's not enough to redeem the film in any significant way. The film is bad, but not gut-wrenchingly so. In fact, I could generously say it's more mediocre than bad. Anyone old enough to count past 10 will probably find this a slog to get through, but it's very clearly aimed at very, very young kids, and the bright colours and things will probably hold their attention. It's harmless if they want to watch it, but apart from that, there's no reason to check it out. And that was The Scary Godmother. Apparently this film has 5 sequels based on the other books, but I have no plans to check them out anytime soon. Unless there's a high demand for them, that is. I finished recording this video on Halloween, but it will most likely come out slightly after Halloween. Probably very early in the morning of the next day, I'm not sure, it depends how long it takes me to edit. But I do have one more Halloween video left planned for this month, even though it will technically have to come out after Halloween. But it's a surprise, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you in my next video. Peace out.
When hinges creak in doorless chambers, and strange and frightening sounds echo through the halls, whenever candle lights flicker where the air is deathly still, that is the time when ghosts are present, practicing their terror with ghoulish delight.